Today I want to talk about how the movie The Sixth Sense is the perfect metaphor for knowing how to handle negative emotions and potentially even processing trauma. Did M. Night intend for this to be the perfect metaphor for that? I don't know, maybe. The more I watch it, the more I'd be surprised if it didn't have anything to do with that when he was writing it. But at the same time, remember when you're in high school and you dissect the shit out of a book and the teacher's saying something like,
"Oh, the hay is a metaphor for loss."
And you're like, really? Is it? How do we know? Are you sure? Seems like a reach. In this case, I don't know what the writer intended. But what I do know is that really good art is usually rooted in such foundational human truths that I think that that's why there can be so many different interpretations that feel very fitting coming out of the same artwork that might have been completely unintentional from the writer. It's just rooted in truth, and that just means there's a lot of patterns to resonate with. Does that make any sense? Anyway, so first of all, I'd hope that this is obvious, but if you haven't seen The Sixth Sense, there's going to be some heavy spoilers in this video, and I recommend you turn this off right now and go watch it if you've never seen it. Not just so that you can come back to this video and have a really nice metaphor to go through life with, but also because it's brilliant. This is easily my top 10 favorite films of all time. It's entertaining, it's beautifully written, it's wonderfully acted. Actually, on that note, can we just have a moment for Toni Collette? Just a moment.
Do I make her proud?
How did she not win the Oscar? Who won the Oscar that year? I'm sure they were great too, but Toni has never won an Oscar, and I'm distraught about this in the same way that I was distraught that Leo had never won an Oscar before The Revenant. Also a moment for Sebastian. Killing it. Killing it. The talent in this movie, I'm telling you. Whoa, those lights are strobing like crazy. That's annoying. Sorry. I think hints to this perfect metaphor start very, very early in the movie. The iconic, chilling line.
Do you know why you're afraid when you're alone? I do. I do.
Again, I'm not saying that M. Night was trying to imply this, but in terms of the metaphor that we're working with today, that line is so fitting to why we avoid our feelings. Do you know why you're afraid when you're alone? I do. A lot of people don't really like to be alone with themselves, like really alone with themselves, because you're alone with your thoughts and your feelings and things that are just laying dormant deep down in that subconscious are just waiting to bubble up to consciousness, to torment you about that thing that you did when you were 17 years old and everybody saw it and laughed and made fun of you. Yeah, you're still thinking about that, just in the background all the time. You have to keep thinking about it
Forever.
It's the only way to make sure it never happens again, or so your brain thinks. So we're afraid when we're alone because there are a lot of things in our mind that we do not want to face, and that's normal for everybody. But for the sake of the metaphor, the ghosts in the movie equal our negative feelings or potentially our traumatic moments. Wasn't a good sound. Did you hear that? My microphone spring just made a weird sound. Shit's about to calm down. So when Donnie Wahlberg, aka Vincent Gray, is saying this in the movie, we know on a second watch, not on the first watch, this movie's so good. He's saying that because he is tormented by ghosts. He is tormented by seeing dead people. Spoilers. God, I hope no one's still here who hasn't seen it. Let's pretend for our metaphor, those are his thoughts, his negative emotions, and potentially his most traumatic memories. These are unhealed wounds. I think that's the most important part. If it's a spectrum, we have negative emotions on the more mild end, and then we have full-blown trauma on the other end. I'm not saying that this metaphor or even the method that I'm going to get into can heal all trauma. Not making that claim. Obviously, with anything mental health related, always work within your capacity and never above it. See a professional therapist if you need to. When you have really negative emotions about something, a part of you can basically form around that negative experience, and it can develop coping mechanisms to try to prevent you from ever feeling that thing again. Some of these coping mechanisms might be really unhealthy, might be really unhelpful, might have helped you initially, but don't help you long-term now that you're out of that danger. So using The Sixth Sense as a metaphor for mental health, we also see a bit of that. We see Malcolm going over notes between Vincent Gray, his initial patient that he couldn't help, and Cole Sear, who is the main character of the film. We see him comparing his notes from 10 years ago, saying that Cole is basically just like Vincent. Possible mood disorder, antisocial behavior, anxiety.
They're both so similar.
He hasn't healed from his wounds, and we're watching him make the same mistakes again.
I'm not helping him.
This is also interesting because he thinks that if he can help Cole, he will basically be able to help Vincent, even though Vincent is obviously dead and gone. We do this too, mentally all the time. Sometimes we're seeking out patterns in people or in situations that part of us wants closure on. We either want to fix something, or we want to do the right thing this time, or we just think that by getting closure on a similar situation, it will then heal the part of us that is upset about the other thing, even though that other thing is long in the past. I think that we see this with Malcolm as well, because he straight up says it to Cole in the hospital.
If you can help this new boy, be like helping that other one too.
This is not the fun metaphor though. We're not even really in it yet. Bear with me. These are just little things that I've noticed that are kind of fun. So trauma and negative feelings will keep surfacing repeatedly and trying to get our attention until we heal it. Unless, of course, you repress it. Whole other thing. And oftentimes we can try to ignore these negative feelings or these traumatic memories, but they will do a lot to try to get our attention, and sometimes they will try to get our attention so much so that other people around us will see its effects. I feel like the cabinets here are a pretty good metaphor for that. Cole is trying to ignore what he knows is going on around him, but he can't, and it affects his environment. And yet, he still denies it. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to address it.
Something you're looking for, baby?
Pop-Tarts.
He doesn't want to face his fears. So we know that Cole has stuff brewing under the surface, and we just don't know it's ghosts yet. Given that Cole is dealing with these ghosts, it makes sense that he's very hesitant to talk about it because it scares the shit out of him, obviously. But he says a lot of things like,
They don't have meetings about rainbows.
and
Don't feel like talking today?
those are things that I think we can all relate to. Times you either don't want to talk about things with other people or even admit things to yourself. It feels like it's easier to ignore feelings, so we try. But when we have a lot of these negative feelings, when we have a lot of trauma that we're carrying, the people around us start to see that reflected in our faces, in our general energy, in the same way that Lynn, Cole's mom, can see these after images of something strange in every picture with Cole. It's like a shadow that follows him around. In this case, it's a ghost, but in our metaphor, it could be sadness, it could be anger, it could be loneliness, unworthiness, etc., etc. That shit shows up is what I'm trying to say. That's a nice little metaphorical moment there. You know, even if M. Night didn't intend for this metaphor, they do talk a lot about feelings in this movie. Like here.
Sometimes we do things to draw attention, to express our feelings about certain issues.
And I also love that he mentions free association writing, because as a side note, free association writing, when I was really, really sick with a lot of health issues, the very first thing that started to help me was actually doing just that.
Free association writing is when you take a pencil in your hand and you put the pencil to a piece of paper and you start writing. And you don't look at what you're writing or think about what you're writing, you just keep your hand moving.
I think a lot of what I was going through around that time was a lot of traumatic things being stored in my body, really disrupting my nervous system, getting stuck in a state of fight, flight, or freeze. And to do free association writing was my first chance to start to release a lot of these feelings I didn't even know I had. And they talk about exactly that in the movie.
And after a while, keep your hand moving long enough, words and thoughts start coming out that you didn't even know you had in you. Feelings you had deep inside of you.
Not a metaphor, literal good advice. Although in Cole's case, it's really intense. It's much better to get them out, because the more you try to suppress something, the more it's gonna wanna bubble up. It's gonna come back one way or another in your habits, in your behaviors, in your subconscious beliefs, in your dreams. Like, that shit's gonna show up unless you really successfully repress something, but that's not normally a conscious thing you can do. I think that would be suppression. Repression is like, it's just gone, it's just wiped. And yeah, I don't think that's a conscious thing. And I love that in this moment,
If you could change something in your life, anything at all, what would it be?
I don't want to be scared anymore.
this is basically a precursor, a foreshadowing to the key to solving Cole's problem. Cole doesn't want to be scared anymore. And ironically, the very thing he's going to need to do to be less afraid is to face his fears head on. That is a beautiful metaphor for how to deal with negative emotions and traumatic memories. Again, within your capacity, but oftentimes the way out is through. The first moment that Cole does this well is right here.
Tell me a story about why you're sad.
You think I'm sad?
He asks a simple question to figure out why Malcolm is sad. Remember, in this metaphor, Malcolm is basically one of his feelings.
I'm not supposed to talk about stuff like that.
The first thing that you want to start to do is ask questions. You want to essentially befriend your feelings, befriend your ghosts that follow you around, befriend the things that are opening cabinets to try to get your attention. Feelings and trauma can also be tricky because, like this line,
They only see what they want to see.
our feelings can cause us to only see what they want to see. These parts of us that, like I said, can adapt these maladaptive coping mechanisms can sometimes blind us to more context, a different story to tell ourselves, safety where we feel like there's none, connection where we feel like there's none. And this is another poetic thing in the movie that reminds us of the nature of feelings and trauma. And because a lot of these emotions are really negative and they're really scary, obviously we want to run from them. Flight response. Sometimes we'll freeze response. Cole doesn't sucker punch any ghosts in these movies, but we can have a fight response too to some of these feelings. For Cole, his red tent is his safe space for the most part, and we have an equivalent safe space in our mind. They give us something to distract, to make us feel better, to numb ourselves. They allow us to avoid confronting all of these feelings. Think about what your tent equivalent is. What do you use as a safe space to not tackle your tough feelings? Another beautiful thing in this movie that is very metaphorical for mental health is this.
You ever feel the prickly things on the back of your neck?
Yes.
And the tiny hairs on your arm, you know, when they stand up?
Yes.
That's them.
So in the context of the movie, obviously this is like very spooky and chilling because he's talking about literal ghosts. But in our metaphor, this works really well because a way to start to get to know feelings is also to pay attention to where they are in your body. When you feel a certain feeling, where is it? Does your jaw get tense? Does your chest feel tight? Do your hands feel hot? Do you feel nauseous? A lot of the energy from emotions that go unresolved tends to get stored in the body in a way or a pattern that every time that emotion kind of presents itself, this physical reaction is paired with it. But this is a nice little, maybe accidental nod to that because when Cole senses these ghosts, aka feelings, he can feel it with these very noticeable cues in his body. I love that. It's spooky, but I love it. Like, it just fits so well. If M. Night didn't mean for this to be intentional, it's crazy. Anyway. So I've been going kind of chronologically in the movie so far. Here's where the metaphor is really, really, really at its strongest in this scene in the church with Cole and Malcolm. Cole's already told him, I see dead people. They're everywhere, walking around. They don't see each other. They don't know they're dead. They only see what they want to see, etc., etc., etc. And Malcolm's just like, oh, crazy, sure, kid. Malcolm finally believes that Cole is seeing ghosts. So he approaches Cole in the church and he has an idea and he says,
What do you think these ghosts want when they talk to you?
Just help.
That's right. That's what I think too. They just want help, even the scary ones. And I think I might know a way to make them go away.
How?
Listen to them.
this is the heart of our metaphor. If you take nothing else away from all the examples in this video, just take away this one. Our unhealed emotional wounds just want help, even the scary ones. And the way to do that is to listen to them. This is the whole thing. And once this dawned on me, anytime I've ever had these negative emotions or traumatic memories come up since then, I think I have to treat this like the sixth sense. And I'm telling you, it works. I realized this parallel because I was reading a ton of books on psychology. I was going through a lot of therapy. I was trying different therapy modalities. And the thing that I noticed that kept coming up over and over and over again in all of these books was the same basic thing. The gist of everyone, even if it was worded differently, the gist of everyone's thing was essentially that these parts of you, these feelings, are not rooted in something bad, even if it feels like they are. Everything is rooted in a very human emotion that we can find compassion for, that just wants to be heard and desperately wants to be healed. This, for me, goes a lot into IFS therapy, which is internal family systems. That is the type of therapy that has helped me the most. But just to sum it up quickly, it's basically a therapy modality that believes that our psyche kind of operates in different parts. We have these negative experiences that bring up really negative negative feelings, and then a part basically forms to protect us, to make sure that we never feel that way again. It develops coping mechanisms, it develops protective systems. These parts might react once something has happened, or they might be a part that kind of acts proactively to prevent things from happening. But regardless, these are parts of us that all have a job that they think that they're doing to help us. These parts think that they're keeping us safe. They came about for a reason. When this part was first needed, it might have had the perfect coping mechanism to get you through that situation. But once you've left danger, once you're back into safety, that part might keep doing that protective mechanism, even though it's no longer helpful. In fact, it might start to be unhelpful in your normal everyday life, but you don't even know why this part of you is showing up this way, why it's doing what it's doing, where it's coming from, where it was essentially born. And the way to fix these maladaptive coping mechanisms, defense mechanisms, whatever it may be, is first to become aware. Cole is aware of his ghosts, obviously. Then it's to get very curious. Cole starts to do this by asking questions. When he asks Malcolm, "Why are you sad?" That's the first step that he takes to start to solve his problem, and he doesn't even know it yet, but his curiosity is the next step. And then, like Malcolm suggests, these parts, these feelings, these ghosts just need to be listened to. They just want help, even the scary ones. And this is not an overnight thing, even for Cole. Cole knows that he should listen to them. Cole knows that he should try to help them. But even so, they're still fucking scary. I mean, Jesus Christ, look at this shit. Terrifying. So it's no wonder that he has an adjustment period trying to get used to this idea. It is not less scary to face your scary feelings just because you know that maybe that's what you should do. It's still scary. It still takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of consistency. It takes patience. It's not easy, but the way out is through. And then we see Cole really put this idea into practice. A very scary fetus Misha Barton shows up in Cole's safe space, being a little vommy girl. And even though he's terrified, and even though he runs initially, he gathers himself, he finds some courage, he walks back over, uncovers her, and asks,
Do you want to tell me something?
This is, chef's kiss. If he didn't mean it, it's just incredible. This is how we approach our tough feelings. This is how we approach our unhealed wounds. Do you want to tell me something? What is it you want me to know? Again, I'm taking a lot of this from the framework of IFS. Highly recommend you look into it if you've never heard of it. The man who created it is named Dick Schwartz. He's got several books on the topic. Can't recommend them enough. But it's funny because if you've never tried this, it's really kind of mind-blowing. If you just sit and you close your eyes and you think about this really painful memory or feeling or part of yourself, and you just ask mentally or get someone to ask you, what does this feeling or this part want you to know? You actually will start to get answers from yourself. You know yourself. You actually know yourself much better than you realize you do if you've never done this before. And it's incredible the kinds of things that will come up and just surface instantly as soon as you start asking questions. But it takes the effort of getting to know them to start to unravel them into a spot where they feel safe enough. And sometimes when you start asking these questions, you realize, man, this is from a memory way back then, like from childhood, that I didn't even know I was holding on to. I've never really consciously thought about this, but when I follow it back, when I listen to this part of myself that's feeling this way, it started here.
She came a long way to visit me, didn't she?
Yeah, our feelings come a long way to visit us sometimes. So in the movie, Cole listens to Kira, which is the Misha Barton ghost. And because he listens to her, he knows how to help her. He goes to her room, she gives him what he needs in the creepiest way possible, and then he goes and gives it to her dad. And because he gives that box to Kira's dad can then find out that Kira's mom, who looks a lot like Jan from The Office, has been keeping Misha Barton, Kira, sick, and is the reason that she died at a very young age. That also saves Kira's little sister from the same fate, because she was starting to get sick too. And what happens once he helps Kira out? Does he ever see Kira again? No, because he helped her, and she could move on. We see him get more comfortable with other ghosts.
They're the ones that used to hurt me.
And learn to listen to them and befriend them.
We have to hurry.
Who were you talking to?
And then the ultimate ghost that he wants to help is obviously Malcolm.
I got an idea how you can talk to your wife. Wait till she's asleep. Then she'll listen to you and she won't even know it.
Which is very appropriate for the metaphor because we hold a lot of subconscious shit that actually can come up in our dreams. Carl Jung was a big proponent of thinking that dreams meant a lot about our psyche. Because Cole helps Malcolm, and because Malcolm helps him, they have this beautiful moment where he says,
not going to see you anymore, am I?
I think we said everything we needed to say.
When these ghosts are listened to, when they are helped, they let go, they can move on. Malcolm talks to his wife in her sleep. He realizes some crazy shit. You know, the dead all along thing. What a f***ing twist. Still one of the best twists ever, he says to his wife.
I think I can go now. Everything will be different in the morning.
And then we see a bright light at the end. Feelings and traumatic, unhealed wounds can be a lot like that. Once they tell you what they need to feel safe, to feel loved, to feel worthy, whatever it may be, whatever the wound is, they start to let go. The goal is not actually to get rid of these things. The goal is to transform them in a way that helps you, not harms you. Sometimes it just means diluting the activation of a memory that might be traumatic. Sometimes it means reassigning a part of you to a more helpful role. You know, like if that part's there to protect you, can they protect you in a way that doesn't make your life harder, that actually helps it? And with a lot of negative feelings, you'll find that they really are not nearly as scary to face as you think they're going to be. You can find a lot of compassion for where these feelings are coming from. You can find a lot of empathy and understanding for why they're there to begin with. They're there to protect you. And when you learn how to befriend them, you can coexist alongside them. You know, Cole doesn't stop seeing ghosts, but now he's less afraid when he sees one. And because Cole now has this skill, he can help other people with it too. He helps his mom by telling her a real cute thing about her grandma, and that helps heal a part of her that now she can let go of. I think that that's very true of getting really good at facing your feelings. In my life, the more I've gotten used to confronting my own feelings, the more I've been able to kind of empathetically guess what someone might be dealing with. You know, like they might just be defensive because there's a part of them that feels like they need to protect them. There's a part of them that feels insecure about this. It's just a feeling that's showing up right now. You can tell when you're talking to a very emotional part of someone once you get to know your very emotional parts. It's easier to at least understand others, to empathize with others, to be patient with others when you've learned that skill with yourself. So it's the gift that keeps on giving, and I think that's true in Cole's case, and I think that's true in our case when we do that work. Intentional or not, this is a brilliant film, and I love that really now there's 3 different ways to watch it. There's the first time you watch it, obviously then it's different the second time you watch it, but now I hope that you'll go back and you'll watch it a third time and see it different again as this metaphor for how we can help our own mental health. If you ever forget what to do when you find yourself in the depths of an intense negative emotion, think of The Sixth Sense and remember, you basically need to try to walk up to your negative emotion as if it is a little vomiting girl in your safe space of a tent and ask it, is there something you want to tell me? Give it a try, let me know how it goes. I love using movies as metaphors to guide me through life. I'm a metaphorical bitch. You give me a metaphor that sticks and that works really well, I will just use it over and over and over. And honestly, some of the most helpful things I've ever done therapy-wise has been finding the right metaphor and then reminding myself of it until it's second nature. This has been one of the biggest ones by far. My other biggest one is from The Office. I'll do an episode on that one day too. And if there's still people here at this point that have never seen the movie, just please go watch it. Just go watch it right now. And please don't tell me that you watched this before you watched that, okay? I just don't want to know.